Hello and welcome everyone. This is Taco Movie Talks. I'm joined here with Ethan, aka Film Junkie on YouTube. Check out his link in the pinned comment down below. We have both watched Stanley Kubrick's 13 movies in his filmography, where he starts out as a young, up and coming director and becomes the legend that we all know him to be. We're going to go through these, rate every single one, and rank them on his list of 13. First and foremost, Ethan, thank you for joining me today, and I'm excited to hear your rankings of Stanley Kubrick's films.
My pleasure. I wasn't completely prepared for this. The only one I rewatched was Doctor Strangelove just to get my bearings. But I remember I remember my experiences with most of Stanley Kubrick's films.
That is all good. If there's any one that you're a little bit fuzzy on, just let us know. But
Hmm.
either way, I'm very excited to get your takes. And the first movie we're going to talk about is Fear and Desire. This was Kubrick's directorial debut in 1952 and is obviously not a film that he is very well known for now that he has passed and all of his films have come out. Ethan, why don't you kick us off? What are your kind of thoughts, ratings, and rankings of Kubrick's debut?
Fear and Desire, I should say, is the first of his three, I want to say, like beginners movies where he was just getting his bearings as a storyteller, and it wasn't until Paths of Glory where he really came into his own as just like a brilliant storyteller. And Fear and Desire is definitely one that he himself was ashamed of. He tried to set fire to the original negatives that they were filmed on. And while it's not terrible. It's not a terrible movie. It does lack that a noticeable quality of Kubrick's, where he's just very when it comes to just the genre that he's working with, he's so on it and he's so committed to it. But I just don't know if he's so committed to this story or this genre. And it's kind of a cheesy movie as well. Um, Probably his worst shot film that he's ever done, which is saying something because it's not particularly shot bad. It's just nothing special.
Mm.
But overall, it's just a movie that's kind of forgettable and not one that, when it comes to Kubrick, that we remember quite fondly. At least I don't remember it quite fondly. So uh, I think I gave it a 2 out of 5 or a 2.5 out of 5. And I stick it at the bottom of the list.
Yeah, so I'm very close to you, Ethan. It's not a story written by him, which a lot of Kubrick's best stories he has a hand in writing, or is written by someone who is, a very top notch writer and has changes made by him, as we'll see later on. There was, in my mind, you could see some cinematography, like glimpses of there's some proficiency to this, and the story on the face of it is interesting enough to where I didn't find it to be a bad movie compared to a Kubrick movie. It is definitely the worst. So I have this at 13 as well, but and I might be biased from the fact that it has Kubrick's name tagged to it, so I want to give it every single benefit of the doubt. That could very well be kind of a bias in my rating, but I gave it a 3 out of 5 because the story has a little bit of interest. But to one of your points, the cheesiness, this movie does kind of, it almost feels a little bit like a TV movie. And I don't know if you felt
Yeah,
that way as well, but
absolutely.
it doesn't have that same Kubrick feel. Yet, the one thing I will say is there was some very unique shots that I did definitely appreciate in this. That I think you'd have to have a really keen eye to catch that at the time, but you can definitely see that Kubrick still had talent even at this very early junction in his career.
Definitely.
The next movie up is Killer's Kiss. This is 1955, and I thought, sort of like Fear and Desire, but even a little bit more, the ending of this film shows some actual promise. I can't remember, but Criterion Channel has kind of like a film historian or maybe just a critic. They kind of talk about how Killer's Kiss is one of the more unique Kubrick projects, and the fight scene in the mannequin shops specifically is one of the scenes that kind of shows what Kubrick can do with set pieces. And because it's so early in his career, kind of has the benefit of having a lot of kind of happenstance happen as to where he becomes the perfectionist that we know him to be later on in his career. So we get some unique shots from that. But Ethan, I kind of want to ask you your opinion on this film and then follow it up with your rating and ranking as well.
Well, I'd say this is probably one of the three movies on here that I barely remember. I somehow remember Fear and Desire more, but that's just because I remember it was kind of bad and cheesy in some areas. Whereas Killer's Kiss, I remember it being a decent little movie, but I don't remember much about it. In fact, I don't remember almost anything about it. So it's gonna be really hard for me to like judge it. I'd need more time, but I'd probably like maybe later down the line I'd probably give a proper opinion of it. Um, but I have it as a 3 out of 5, and I have it second to last, right above Fear and Desire.
Yeah, I mean, despite the fact, that it didn't stick out with you as much, there's two scenes that I actually really remember. There's a boxing scene and then there's a fight in a mannequin shop. But I will say, those are it felt like a story that just kind of kept trying to, we have to think of something interesting to keep the story going to make it feature length. But because of that, it was throwing a lot at you to constantly keep the pace going. So it's like a double-edged sword. You could kind of critique the movie for that, but you could also maybe enjoy it more because of that. And I think I fall into the latter category. I gave this a 3.5, but I have it ranked in the exact same spot as you, Ethan. I have it number 12 on my list. Next up, we have The Killing. This is, I believe, the only heist movie that Kubrick did, and I think as we get towards the end of this list, you will find that the only consistent thing about Kubrick is that for the large majority of his films, they are very high quality, and also that he kind of likes to dip his toes into different genres and subgenres, which I think is relatively unique for directors. I really enjoyed the story of this, and I liked the actors' performances in this as well. This feels like a more efficient version of a Kubrick movie in regards to the previous two, and it felt like a big step up in terms of his career. And there's going to be another kind of ginormous step up that he takes later on. But this is where I think he really starts to solidify himself as a great director. I really enjoyed this one. How about you, Ethan?
Um, yeah, I definitely, as opposed to the first two, I think this one is great. It is it's actually a pretty suspenseful watch. It's
Mm-hmm.
one of his more suspenseful movies. It's very quick on its feet. A lot of really great shot composition, like the scene where where Kubrick essentially just like follows the camera on one of the horse jockeys. I thought that was really great, and it's definitely one of the images that sticks in your mind. And just the whole heist of it all is so well constructed, and the twists and turns that it takes was really well done as well. And I really love the character of Johnny Clay. He's very
Mm-hmm.
cocky, and he's just very sure of himself all the time. And I just really liked that character. And the cast of characters was really great too.
I absolutely agree. This is definitely the strongest character to date. So, of his first three movies, Johnny Clay was definitely the strongest written character and performed quite well. Ethan, I gave this one a 4 out of 5. Great. And I have it ranked 10th on my list. So, if that's any indication, I think it is to say that, for a great movie to be so far down the list, it's really, we got past those first two. Pretty much almost everything else to come is going to really be a strong movie for sure. How about you?
I also gave this a 4 out of 5. I think it's great. Not as much personality as, say, his later movies, but I still think it's a really great watch. I actually have it a little bit higher than you. I have it at number 9.
Absolutely. The next film we have is Paths of Glory, starring Kirk Douglas. Um, and to my knowledge, this is Kubrick's first foray with a big name actor kind of leading the charge. This has the distinct fingerprint of a Kubrick film, and I think, and correct me if you have a different perspective of this, but this is kind of the first example where you really get the very cutting commentary, maybe even you could argue a cynical view that is portrayed in a Kubrick film. I thought this was stupendous. We reviewed it actually in our very first episode together, if I'm remembering correctly, and
Yes, we did.
it was a great episode. I encourage anyone to check that out. Really great war movie. I gave this then and now a 4 out of 5. And I just want to double check that. Gave it a 4 out of 5, and I have it ranked ninth on my list. What are your thoughts, Ethan?
Well, I definitely remember rewatching it for our very first podcast. I might even rewatched it like one time afterwards, but I absolutely love this movie. I think it is yeah, I agree. It is the first Kubrick movie. Like it's the first Kubrick-esque movie directed by him. And it's fantastic. I love it's definitely what he used in terms of kind of satire, but more of a satirical drama than a satirical comedy that he would do with Doctor Strangelove.
Mm.
Um, and Kirk Douglas, excuse me, is fantastic in the movie. Just a brilliant performance all around. It is a very short movie, but it's a hard hitting one, and I love it quite a lot for what it is. And so, despite the fact that it's an early Kubrick movie, I still think it's one of his very best. I give it a 4.5 out of 5, and I place it fifth on my list.
Wow. Okay. I can totally see that. I think it's a film that ages amazingly and is really, really a great, kind of straightforward story, and the ending is just absolutely brilliant. The next movie that we have is Spartacus, and is, I think, absolutely beautifully done. His longest run time to date. It's kind of an odyssey of a movie, and it takes you all the way through Spartacus being a slave, becoming a gladiator of sorts, breaking through and leading a slave charge all the way to his capture and crucifixion. It's I know this word gets a lot of hate because for a long period of time it was thrown around very willy nilly, but it is very epic in its scale and what it achieves. And I think it's definitely to date, and because of its color, one of his most beautiful films up until this point. And there are a few that kind of outdo that later in his cinematic career, but I still think it stands near the top of his filmography as far as one of the most gorgeous pictures. Ethan, what are your thoughts on Spartacus?
In terms of filmmaking, I think it's a really marvelous achievement. It was his first epic movie, just like he would make movies that are like 90 minutes or less, but this is a 3 hour epic Roman battle movie. Um, and I don't really care for its story in terms of a Kubrick movie, just because he's just managed to make such incredible character and dialogue pieces throughout the years that I think Spartacus comes off as a little weak. Um, it just reads to me as a just a standard Hollywood epic. You
Mm-hmm.
could tell that it wasn't Kubrick's original idea. Um, and he wasn't as in my mind he wasn't as passionate about it as he was for say Paths of Glory, but I still think it is a really well directed movie. Just there's a couple of really great shots. If I recall, there's like a fire log scene
Mm.
where people are rolling a fire log down a hill. Brilliant, brilliant stuff. A lot of really great stuff. Some scenes kind of look like a theater, like a stage,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that's a lot of the appeal. It's just a really well directed, a really good looking movie, but with a story that's just not exactly my cup of tea. So it gets a solid 3.5 from me, and I put it 11th on my list.
I think you make a lot of very good points. Self admittedly, I'm a bit of a sucker when it comes to like timepieces, like interesting timepieces for me, and this definitely falls into that. And I'm also a sucker for aesthetics, so this definitely rode on the curtails of those two categories. Though I'm only slightly above you in rating, where I have it at a 4 out of 5. And ranking is certainly where it gets the big jump, and it is seventh on my list. But I completely and totally agree with you. Whereas Paths of Glory was, like we said, distinctly a Kubrick film, this one you could, I think, easily pass it off as a non-Kubrick film to people who like don't aren't knowledgeable to that sort of thing. Um, where like let's just say you know Kubrick style, but you don't know all of his movies, you could probably slip this in and they might not realize it. It doesn't have the same satirical feel that we come to know after watching all of his films. So you are, I completely agree with you. The story is definitely not the strong suit of this, but what is done with the set design, the costume design, and the actual color throughout the film really, really appealed to me, and that's why it's so high up on my list. Up next, we have Lolita. This is based on a very famous, or maybe I should say infamous, novel that is based upon um, a middle aged man having a love affair with a teenage girl not of age, and it's the selling point kind of is the fact that it is so controversial, and I think to my knowledge it actually made this film very, very hard to actually put into theaters for Kubrick, and it had a very hard rating where I think you actually had to be ID'd as someone 18 or older to view. I love the daringness of Kubrick to go after a film like this that has really strong source material. People who have read the book really admire what it tried to achieve, and I admire that he tried to achieve that on a cinematic level. It was interesting. Again, I don't think Kubrick's fingerprints are too noticeable on this film, a la Spartacus, but maybe more so than that one. Ethan, let me get your thoughts on Lolita.
So Lolita, yeah, like you said, based on one of the most infamous modern novels of all time by Russian author Vladimir Nabokov. Uh, I This is one of those where I do remember quite a bit of it, but like The Killer's Kiss, it's a bit fuzzy on certain parts. Most notably, the ending. I'm pretty fuzzy on the ending, but yeah, I think this movie is very daring, though kind of boring at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day. Um, it's not particularly a story that it like really hooked me. And obviously, it's just a really awkward story
Mm.
to really get right because it's just a very dodgy source. It's just very dodgy subject. But I think Kubrick managed it very well. I think it's a little long, and again, this is where Kubrick is starting to work out his kinks. But I think with his next movie, he really comes into his own again. But here, I think it's one of his lesser films for me personally. I give it a 3.5. I still think it's better than Spartacus, just because of the interesting concept. But I give it 10th place, just right above Spartacus.
I'm with you as far as rating. I give this a 3.5 as well. I think one thing I will mention: Peter Sellers is in this for a little bit. He's in the beginning, he's in the ending, and then a little bit kind of sprinkled throughout the entirety of the middle section. But he was like like high and above everyone else's as far as performance wise. Sue Lyon, who plays Lolita, was also she was pretty good as well. But Peter Sellers is great, and I think that led to a relationship where Kubrick ended up using him again, and thank God for that because he has a tremendous performance in one of the films we're going to talk about moving forward. But he was really good in this. That was one of the saving graces of this film. Uh, Combined with the fact that this story is very interesting on the face of it, but a lot of your criticisms I completely agree with, Ethan. Again, 3.5 out of 5, and I rank this 11th out of 13. And the next film that we have has none other than Peter Sellers as well, and that is Doctor Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. I'll keep it relatively short and sweet. I think that this is one of the best satirical comedies of all time, and it's very hard to give it its due credit just through words. I think this is such a unique film, and this is from Lolita to Doctor Strangelove. This was that giant step forward that I was talking about. This is where I think Stanley Kubrick becomes the man, the myth, the legend between Lolita and Doctor Strangelove. I absolutely love how ludicrous a plot this is. It is great when it comes to actual storyline, and then the performances of Peter Sellers and George C. Scott are just tremendous. It's amazing to see Kubrick do a satirical comedy because it is executed so well, and it's something that probably a lot of audiences didn't think or know rather that Kubrick was capable of. Ethan, what are your thoughts?
Well, I do love the bomb. I don't know. This is the this is the first. This is the only movie that I rewatched for this. Because I really wanted to rewatch it and see if I can pick up on more of the satirical edge that this has um, on the sociopolitical atmosphere of that time. And yeah, I definitely got more of that. And there's a lot of really funny moments in it. Um, just just as well as iconic moments. It is definitely one of the best and most important satirical war movies ever. Um, I Even the way it's shot again is just fantastic. The scenes of the war room are just so well shot and well. The sound is so booming. Um, I really really love Peter Sellers in here, especially since he has to play three different people, and they're all so different. Um, and all three of them are really funny roles, uh, just for completely different reasons. And Sterling Hayden returns as the psychotic Jack Ripper, and I thought he was excellent in here. He was really funny and over the top, especially when he was holding that giant gun, just mowing down his own like army is so funny. Um, it's just a really well done, well told satire of the Cold War, and I really love it for that.
As do I. I I rated this a 4.5 out of 5. I have it fifth on my list. Um, it's I feel guilty not giving it a 5, but for whatever I think it is a movie though, and so I kind of want to offset why when I initially rated this that I gave it, despite it not being a 5 out of 5. I think it is one of the most important movies to watch, and I think if you are a fan of cinema, you should watch this at least once, and then I think once you see it once, you'll probably want to watch it again, as I did, and obviously as you did, Ethan. What was your rating and ranking of this?
I give this a 4.5 as well. Brilliant film. I put it at number 7 on my list.
Alrighty. The next film that we have is none other than 2001: A Space Odyssey. And Ethan, would you like to start on this one?
Sure. So, 2001: A Space Odyssey is in my top 10 favorite movies of all time, which is a incredibly cliche answer given by any hipster or cinephile ever, but it's true. When I first watched this movie, I didn't like it that much. I think it's just because there were so many distractions that I just needed to get rid of, and so I just the second time I watched it, I drowned out all distractions, and it was one of the most mind blowing experiences I've ever had watching a movie. Just the technical marvel that this movie is. It's just it's unprecedented for the time. It's unprecedented now. Nothing could ever replicate what 2001 did, both as a visual marvel and as uh, a unique storytelling marvel that it is, because it really is just like using its visuals to capture so much thematic resonance um, within its story is so captivating and so memorable that um, this you're just wondering, did this guy how did this guy manage to do it? um, so I don't know if there's much else to say. It's 2001: A Space Odyssey. If you have somehow not seen 2001: A Space Odyssey, then what are you doing? Go see it. It's a masterpiece. Um, while I do love it so much, somehow, and I will give, I am absolutely giving it a 5 star, but somehow I'm putting it at number two because there is one movie that I love more than 2001 from Kubrick.
I think I know the one, but I will say everything you said is absolutely, undeniably correct. I completely endorse it, and you put it much better than I ever could. But I will say one of the points that you made, which I just want to reiterate, is it is literally the combination of one of the most beautiful films ever done with a deep and complex plot where it's just a marriage of two things masterfully done that very few films achieve both simultaneously. It's one of my favorite films of all times too, and you know the reason that it has become a cliche is because it's just that damn good. It really it lives up to the hype. This is number one on my list, and I
Yeah.
want to watch this in theaters at some point in my life.
Oh, yeah. Seeing it in like an IMAX theater, that would be just the most insane thing ever.
The next film on our list is A Clockwork Orange, and look, I had said with Doctor Strangelove that this is where he really cements himself, but I think this is where Kubrick's voice, his cynical viewpoint, and his directorial personality shines through the most. It's a dystopian future where people are pretty much living, well, not people, but our main character is the best anti-hero slash villainous character that I've ever seen. He's very charismatic, yet has little to no empathy, comes off as completely sociopathic, and the beauty of this character is he gives a glimpse of what the future could be and what the youth could be. And obviously, this film, a large aspect of it is how the correctional facilities try to rehabilitate people like Alex, our main character in A Clockwork Orange, and that takes us down a completely interesting path as they are literally trying to drug and brainwash him into a better citizen, and makes really great commentary on both correctional facilities and rehabilitation when it comes to criminals, as well as what each new generation is kind of turning into, and how we look at the youth of our nation or world rather. Ethan, what are your thoughts on this film, your rating, and your ranking?
Well, Clockwork Orange is I'm just gonna say it. It's my favorite movie by Stanley Kubrick. It is in my top five favorite movies of all time. Just the sheer amount of stuff in this movie that just has been firmly implanted in my brain for years at this point is indicative to my other favorite movies ever. Um, I love the performances. I love when narration is a bad stereotype, obviously, but I think when it's done right, it could be so fun for me. And I definitely think Malcolm McDowell's narration in this is excellent. Um, just the way it was implemented was never too much or too little. Um, I I love the cinematography so much. It's not as much of a marvel as 2001: A Space Odyssey, but it is. just the one visual wise that sticks out to me the most when talking about Stanley Kubrick. The production design is fantastic. I love this dystopian design of all the buildings and all the weird paintings and just the psychosexual nature of everything. Um, it is a visceral movie. It is a violent movie, but it's also weirdly an entertaining movie. And I love nearly every second of it. I love going through this journey with this character. I think it's one of the greatest character studies ever, and how he is used um, by people as an example of violence and just the thesis of safety versus free will is such a I think it is done so well here. It is, again, it's my favorite movie by Stanley Kubrick. Number one, easily, 5 stars, easily, and yeah.
Yeah, I think it's insane to think that he came out with a film that can also be seen as groundbreaking after 2001: A Space Odyssey, just because I think people would have tempered their expectations after that, but this film was able to break ground in a completely new way. Arguably one of his best written characters in any of his films, and is also, maybe controversial is the wrong word, but I think, you have Lolita, but I think Clockwork Orange pushes the bounds further in a different sort of direction, but it's so stirring mentally what this film does to you, and what it makes you try to not only wrap your head around but also come to conclusions upon. And I love that he pushed the boundaries in this way. I give it a 5 out of 5 as well, and I only have it third on my list. So there is still a film to come that has the number 2 spot on my list. But the next film that we're going to be going over is Barry Lyndon. And this is another period piece by Kubrick, and it follows the story of kind of a coming of age of an English gentleman, for lack of a better term, who has a very Odyssey-esque story that begins with a duel and kind of also ends with a duel. It's a very rags to riches, back to rags type story, and I do love the structure of this character arc. Ethan, this is kind of a dark horse for people's favorite Kubrick film, and I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on Barry Lyndon.
Um, well, Kubrick just can't stop winning. I think this is one of the most beautiful movies that he's ever done.
Mm-hmm.
Not a visual marvel, but it is just beautiful visually. It's just like a raw beauty that he managed to capture so incredibly. I wanted to mention that he's an Irish
Uh,
social climber. He he's an Irish rogue that rises to the top of the rises to the top, and he goes from a young Irishman to a noble, uh, I guess, general. Is it what is he again? What does he end up as?
he's he becomes a high ranking soldier, but then it's almost like he just becomes a royal at the end. So
Yeah,
quite honestly, I am not sure what his ending military title was.
yeah. Just the stuff that he managed to do in Barry Lyndon. This is where his uh, similar to 2001 and A Clockwork Orange, his perfectionist side really shows. Just the amount of interesting compositions, shot compositions that he managed to capture was so incredible. It is, for a period piece, incredibly entertaining. Um, and for I love its themes of reputation and the uh, almost almost satire of how reputation affects attitude and personality
Hmm.
um, is done so well and so beautifully um, that I just loved every second of it. And the more I thought about it, the more I loved it. Um, and for the third time in a row, I give this a five. Again, I just think it's just that good of a story and that good of a movie. I have it as fourth, so my third is yet to come, but we shall see what that is.
Completely agree. This is definitely in the upper echelon of very gorgeous films within Kubrick's filmography, and we touched upon what makes this story so damn great. So I won't spend time kind of reiterating what Ethan said, but I agree with everything that he did say. I give it a 4.5 out of 5, and I have this sixth on my list, which leaves us with our next film, one of Kubrick's most popular films, The Shining, in which Jack Torrance and his family spend the winter in the Overlook Hotel. Am I? Did I butcher that?
Yeah, no, you
Okay.
got it.
Okay. And some spooky supernatural things seem to affect the family, but I think I've talked about this with you, Ethan, and others, where there is some beauty in the writing that some of this may or may not be um, actual supernatural, which I kind of really appreciate to this film. It's very deep, and it's Kubrick finally dipping his toes into horror, and we rarely see great accredited directors go into the horror genre. So if you're a horror fan and haven't seen The Shining yet, this is an absolute must watch. Ethan, what are your thoughts on The Shining?
Well, The Shining is my favorite horror movie ever, I think. It's either that or The Thing. Um, it is, again, a near perfect movie as far as um, what Kubrick does with it visually and storytelling wise. I had actually read the book by Stephen King, and I can confirm that the movie is better, even though it is kind of a stupid comparison because they're two completely different things, two completely different mediums. Um, but for the sake of you know everything, I think the movie tells the story a lot better, just because Kubrick is such a master at conveying uh, ambiguity and subtlety in his movies just so well. And The Shining is terrifically eerie and masterfully done. And it's just a really fun time with the family, if you know what I'm saying. I give it a 5 out of 5, easy 5 out of 5. It's my third favorite Kubrick movie.
So I like this is very similar in my mind with the set pieces that kind of get burned into your brain like a Clockwork Orange. I think anyone who has seen both a Clockwork Orange and The Shining will distinctly remember the elevator scene in The Shining. They will remember the axe through the door scene in The Shining, and you'll remember Alex's eyes being pried open, that scene, and probably the singing in the rain scene. It's very, as far as pop culture goes, this is one of his most iconic films, and I think rightfully so. I give The Shining a 4.5 out of 5, and it ranks fourth on my list. And I think At this point, I just want to state, if you've seen our videos before, I think we've kind of given some subtext as to what the ratings kind of mean for each of us, but I think it's worth putting here. A 4.5 or a 5, I find as both are masterpieces. A 5 is just literally also a masterpiece that I also love. Do you want to give any kind of background on your ratings as well, Ethan, at this point, just to
Mhm.
clue in any viewers?
Well, yeah, mine is just kind of a 9 is fantastic. I really loved it. Um, but 10 is like something truly special.
Yeah. So I feel like both of ours are fairly similar. It's just it's literally an it factor on a 5 for me, and I can't even really put it into words. And The Shining is like literally on that borderline between a 4.5 and a 5 for me. But nonetheless, moving on, we have Full Metal Jacket, another war film. This is Vietnam with Kubrick, which is just, man, if you were to literally try to orchestrate Kubrick's career, he touched upon a lot of the subject matters that I think people would have kind of wanted to see from him. And this is a film that, for me, I love war films. I love Vietnam War films specifically, and I love Kubrick. So this is like, this is just magic as far as I'm concerned. The first half of the movie gets a lot of love with the whole way through boot camp. That entire section on its own is just, almost all of it is absolutely perfect. And the second half, for a lot of people, hit or miss, is a little bit too strong, but a lot of people do not. It's kind of a come down from the first half, but the more I've watched Full Metal Jacket, the more I've come to appreciate the second half and find it to be very important as well. And I have begun to appreciate that second half a lot as time has gone on. I adore this film. Ethan, what are your thoughts on Full Metal Jacket?
Fantastic movie. I yeah, the first half is definitely the one that gets the most praise, and then it gets a little. Uh, People definitely are split between what their thoughts are on the drastic change in the second half. I still think it's a fantastic second half, though not as strong as that first half was. It is just essentially some of the best work that Kubrick has ever done. That first half, and then the second half is great, but doesn't quite match up to that. Um, Overall, I love the performances, specifically from Arlie Ermy and Vincent D'Onofrio. I think they both did phenomenally. Um, the It definitely showcases the meaning of killing and taking one's life in definitely in a very interesting manner, and just uh, the themes of the war themes that are placed within the movie are so well done. It's definitely one of the best Vietnam War films ever made. That's for sure. Um, I give it a 4.5 out of 5, and I put it at. Hold on, let me check. I believe I put it at number 6 on my list.
So this is maybe the rating is not going to be very controversial, but I think where I have it ranked here and among all war films is where the controversy may begin. I have Full Metal Jacket as a 5 out of 5. I think some people will probably not bat an eye at that, but I have it as Kubrick's second best film of all time, and I think, if I'm remembering correctly, I think it's my favorite war film of all time. Now, like we said, first half cinematic gold, but that second half has grown on me more than a lot of other films have ever been able to do so. And quite frankly, the ending specifically is the part that kind of solidifies it for me as cinematic mastery. I really love what this film was able to do, and for that it has a rating and ranking that is very, very high. But that leaves only one more film in Kubrick's filmography, the film that had him murdered by the Hollywood elites. No, I'm just kidding. But we have Eyes Wide Shut, which is, he had a long sabbatical, we'll call it. Full Metal Jacket came out 1987, and then a 12-year gap in between films, 1999 for Eyes Wide Shut. This is very bold, and the story that it tried to tell, it really went for it with this one. It's a very unique film. Definitely has Kubrick's fingerprints all over it. A big cast when you just consider Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman in it. Great performances by them. But one of the best told stories of infidelity, and there's almost more subtext that the kind of the what do you call it, the tinfoil hat wearers. They look into this film almost as much as The Shining, and trying to look for deeper meaning in this film. And I think that also plays into the aura that surrounded this film, along with this being Kubrick's last film. Ethan, what are your thoughts on Eyes Wide Shut?
Yeah, it's definitely a mysterious movie for his final film. Um, in comparison to that insanely incredible run that he had between Doctor Strangelove and Full Metal Jacket, is just insane. Um, just the sheer amount of what he did for those movies was amazing. And for me, Eyes Wide Shut, a little bit of a whimper to go out on, but I still think it is a really great kind of story about and about sex and just the cult like uh, societal circle associated with sex. It's just really a it is a very brilliant story as far as that is concerned. I do really like Nicole Kidman a lot in this movie. I think Tom Cruise is a little spotty. He wasn't like super interesting as of a character, but there's some really brilliant shot composition, and definitely the use of masks is incredible. Um, I think it is a really great movie. So for his final film, not bad, but I still would have wanted a little bit more. I give it a 4 out of 5, and I put it number 8 on my list.
Talk about synchronicities. Yes, I same rating, same ranking. I'm a 4 out of 5, and I have it number 8 as well. Pretty insane that the last one. I think the elites are trying to message something to us, Ethan, that we rated it the same and ranked it the same. It cannot be a coincidence. Uh, but I must say, yeah, this is, it's definitely, he didn't end on a bad note, and that is awesome. But the run that he had, just to reiterate what you said, is a monumental run that very, very few directors, I think, will ever accomplish. It's what makes Kubrick widely considered the best, or one of the best, in all of cinema worldwide throughout all of time, and rightfully so. Those films are absolutely amazing, and this one is a very beautifully shot, colorful, unique film with a great story. Some people actually have this as their best Kubrick film, but I'm with you. It was not nearly as strong as some of Kubrick's best, which isn't even much of a discredit to him just because of how strong his filmography is. But yeah, it would have been awesome to see Kubrick continue going, and that maybe this film would have been something to rejuvenate him, and there would have been a lesser time period in between this and his next project. And I know, just based on readings about Kubrick, because he's so interesting, that there was a lot of films in the can, so to speak, projects he wanted to work on but never really got to bring to fruition, that all sound really unique and interesting, that I would have loved to see. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see that, but man, I I think I'm speaking the gospel, and I think you would probably agree, Ethan, that Kubrick does stand. He's a giant as far as cinema is concerned, and is one of the greatest of all times.
I'm gonna say a hot take right now.
Mm-hmm.
He's the greatest filmmaker of all time. Very controversial, I know, but he is indeed the greatest filmmaker to have ever lived.
Yeah, I do think if you cut out some of his early works where he's just beginning to get his footing, it's like from a certain time period on, it is nothing but masterpieces, and
Yeah,
that type of consistency, and his highs are so high. I mean, he made a number of films that can be categorized in the best of all time, and a lot of films that can be considered like one of the best of their category. For 2001: A Space Odyssey, I consider it to be one of the best films of all time, but you can easily just categorize it as arguably the best sci-fi. Full Metal Jacket for me is one of the best war films of all time, but I think for you, Paths of Glory might capture that for him. So either way, he's
yeah,
made one of the best war films of all time. A Clockwork Orange falls into, just as a film, one of the best of all times, but dystopian futures, not quite sci-fi, but just kind of dystopian films, it falls into that. The Shining for horror, Doctor Strangelove for satire, Barry Lyndon for kind of epic time period pieces. Very few directors have ever accomplished something similar to that. A lot of people very much stay compartmentalized in the type of films they make, but Kubrick, he was able to be successful in a number of different genres and subgenres, and that makes him a unique bird. And then you put the quality of his works on top of that, and it's just, I mean, there's no one like him.
yeah.
Well, Ethan, this was really, really fun. Not only getting to watch these films, but get to talk about them with you. And I just want to say thank you for joining me on this video.
Of course.
And for those of you who want to check out more of Ethan's work, again, his profile is linked down in the pinned comment down below. Be sure to subscribe to his channel and like this video. Comment your rankings down below. I am interested to hear, because I think a lot of people have different favorite movies of Kubrick, and it's always interesting to hear those. And subscribe as well. You've been great, Ethan. The audience has been great as well. Thank you, and we will catch you on the flippity floop. Bye, y'all.